Old school Rockford Fosgate amps are legendary, but what about this one? Not so much. Over my 10 plus years on YouTube, I've done dozens of videos on Rockford Fosgate equipment, especially the amplifiers. The first amp I saved up my money and bought brand new was a Punch 45 HD back in 1992. You guys can look at the video description. I'll have links to all these amp tests I've done before of the Rockford Fosgate equipment. But today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about one of their products that I think, why in the heck did they make this? We're going to step back to the year 1991, and the full lineup of Rockford Fosgate amps is shown here, including 4 from the Punch series, the 30 HD, 45 HD, 75 HD, and 150 HD. Those are the specs as well as the price at that time. In addition to the Power series, including the 100 HD, the Power 300, the 650, and the 1000. Again, the specs and the prices are included there as well. Now, right off the bat, when you look at this lineup of amps, you'll see one that kind of stands out, and not in a good way. You can see it here. There are some big amps, some shiny amps, some shrouded amps, but then we have this other one, which was shown first in the November 1990 Car Audio and Electronics as a new machine, the Rockford Fosgate Power 100 HD, $329 with an optional $135 shroud. In the April 1991 Car Audio and Electronics directory issue, we will see they have the Power 100 HD listed along with the other amplifiers in the Rockford Fosgate lineup. There is some issues with the specs, but I will get to those later. But think about this, $329 in 1991 is equivalent to around $700 today. This 1991 ad is touting the HD or hybrid design technology, which was released in 1991 to all the Rockford Fosgate Punch amplifiers, saying it eliminates hand-soldered resistors, capacitors, diodes, and transistors in favor of surface mount devices. As you can see here in the ad with all the Punch amplifiers, we do have the Power 100 HD listed as well. So why in the heck did they call this a Power Series? Believe it or not, in 1991, all the Power Series amplifiers were 4-channel, whereas the Punch amplifiers were 2-channel. So I think they put this in the Power lineup just because it was a 4-channel amp, even though it's rated at, you'll see here in a minute what it's rated at to be a Power Series amp is a complete joke. All Gaudiums aside, I figured let's pull out the one I have here. Very nice shape, Rockford Fosgate Power 100 HD from around 1991. You can see from the exterior, if you know early 90s Rockford Fosgate amps, and you know this one, probably late 80s as well because they had a similar design heatsink. On this one, you'll see on one side the power input for power and ground. It's very small. We'll get to that in a little bit, but it's only 12 gauge. But once you see the power ratings, you'll understand why it's only 12 gauge. On the opposite side, we have RCAs. There's 4 RCAs because it is a 4-channel amp. We have a power LED, and then we have gain controls individual for each channels. Left front, right rear, left rear, as well as this funky like a monkey Molex plug. It's a 10-pin Molex plug. This is for your speakers as well as your remote turn on. I have mine going into a terminal block. I'll leave a link in the video description if you want to pick up one of these. I find it very useful for these old amps to use these terminal blocks. Now 16 gauge wire for this amplifier when it only has 12 gauge input is pretty funny. And here you can see how it plugs into the side of the amp, the Molex plug. It gives you all your speaker outputs. But yeah, it's kind of a mess when you plug everything in, and this is how it looks. So on the bottom of the amp, it has some very interesting writing, which tells you about all the wiring, which is very nice in case you don't have the manual at hand. It tells you how to use the power, the turn on, all the speaker connections, all the colors. And it also has 8 4-amp fuses. Those are for protecting the speaker outputs, as well as a switch to go from 4-channel to 2-channel, so that way you only have to use 2 inputs. 10 inches for the length, 7 inches for the width, 1.6 inches for the height. As far as the power output, get ready. 15 watts by 4 at 4 ohms, 25 watts by 4 at 2 ohms, or 50 watts bridged at 4 ohms. It includes hybrid design, fuse protection, stereo mono capable, and shrouds are available from Perfect Interface, the sister company to Rockford Fosgate. Now let's get this amplifier wired up. We're using 12 gauge OFC speaker wire. You can see it here going into the amplifier for the ground and the positive. We're going to plug in the harness here that includes the speakers and the turn on. And then we'll hook up just the front of the RCAs, and we're going to use the switch here in a second just to make sure it's easier to do the test here. Switch it to the 2-channel mode, only using those 1 inputs. And here is a conglomeration of wires. You may see some extra RCAs there, but that's because this is when I was doing the speaker test, and you will see that after we do the dyno test. But yeah, there we have it all wired up. So let's fire up the amp. You can see the power LED comes on. So guess what? You know what that means. Time to fire up the good old SMD DeMoore Engineering Amplifier dyno. We're going to test out this beast and load down my batteries. On the left, you'll see the RMS power output. In the middle, the ohm load. The right, the voltage. We'll also have the remote display so we can calculate efficiency and get ready for that.
This here's my favorite part.
Get out your popcorn. We're doing the 4 ohm 4-channel test first, rated 15 watts by 4 at 0.05% THD. We're running these tests at 1 kilohertz. Here we go. We're showing 2 channels, 19 and 20 watts, right at 14 volts. We have the other 2 channels loaded down with resistors, so all 4 channels are loaded down. Massive power. I know what you guys are thinking. Head unit power from this amp. Yeah, pretty much. 19 and 20 uncertified, which takes us up to the clipping point. What about dynamic? Does it have more dynamics than a head unit would have? Yes, it does. Literally doubles the power. 35 and 36 watts at 14.18 volts. Now, I talked about it before, but get ready. The efficiency, 37%. Ugh, that is horrible even for a Class AB amp. Oh well, let's move on to the 2 ohm 4-channel mode, rated 25 watts by 4 at 0.1% THD. We're obviously going to 1% during this test, 28 and 29 watts. So we're not blowing any speakers out of their cabinets here, but we're getting the rated power. Again, we're not testing at 0.1%, we're testing at 1%, but yeah, Rockford Fosgate amps generally produce their power without a problem. 28 and 29 watts at 13.98 volts. That was uncertified. Let's try the dynamic test, see if it's like before. Does it have a lot more dynamic headroom? Again, it almost doubles the power dynamically. 54 and 60, that's about plus 3 dB of headroom, but check out this. 29.6% efficiency at 2 ohms. Ugh. So now let's bridge the amp and try it using the 40 hertz track. It's rated 50 watts by 2 at 0.1% THD. And you guys may be saying, why are you going to use 40 hertz mode? Well, even Rockford in their little manual here shows you wiring it to subwoofers. That's right, back in the 90s they used 50 watts for subwoofers. I know it don't seem right, but let's try it certified first. We got 51 and 47, but uh-oh, got a little bit of a problem here. No worries, it was just a 15 amp fuse that was in line for the power.
This is not a Mickey Mouse program!
So the recommended fuse is 15 amp, but you have to remember, this is for playback of music. When we're using test tones, you're really loading the amplifier down more than what the ratings are. So in this case, I replaced it with a 25 amp fuse. Let's try the certified test again, 4 ohms bridged, 52 and 48 watts. You can see we pulled 26 amps of current. So wait until you see the efficiency of that. Uncertified takes us up to clipping. Let's see what we get at clipping. Get over 50 watts? Yes, we do. 56 and 55 at 13.97. Now let's try the dynamic test and see if it has dynamic capability built in. Not quite as good as before. The 40 hertz track is putting a little bit more load on the amp, but we got 80 watts and 63, so around 75 average. The efficiency is even worse, 28%. Bridged at 40 hertz, but that's just horrible. Here are the results. You can pause this if you want to see it all. It is not going to blow you out of the water. This amp did its rated power, but OMG, rated power is horrible for this. It's like a head unit. Now what about sound quality? Let's hook it up to some speakers and a sub and find out. Get out your cigars. It's time for the Smoke Jacket Blues. Get out your pebbles, time for a little bit of rock. All right, guys, for what it is, I mean, it wasn't too bad, but honestly, not a whole lot of power, and that's just what we expected. So it sounded okay, but nothing to write home about. Let's find out what's inside. Hybrid design, baby. Let's look at the 1991 January Auto Sound and Security, where they have an article and they show off the Power 100 HD and show off the internals, what it looks like inside. We flip the amp over on the bottom, Rockford Corporation, made in the USA. It's where all these were made in the early 90s. Take off 4 screws on the kind of the side of the amp. That's going to give us access to the internals. Let's go ahead and do that. Slide the bottom plate over just a little bit and then lift it up. And here you go. What do you see? You see some hybrid modules there. Obviously, those are the output driver modules. You do see some coils. You see some capacitors, 16 volt, 330 microfarad. Also some 25 volt, 1000 microfarad. And here are the modules, which are the driver modules for the outputs, which are the things typically go bad with this amp. Also in this part, if you want to pause it, you can kind of see all the different components. I'm not going to go over everything, but it's really cool the way they had this in the install manual that talked about all the parts of the amp. Now let's talk about the pros and cons, things I like, things I think it could be better, at least things to be aware of. Obviously it made rated power, does have 4-channel flexibility, has fuses galore. I guess that's a good thing. Rockford Fosgate name has always been known for good quality and last a long time. It's still working 30 years later. So it's got to be all right. It's relatively compact for the time period, not for today. This will be a 1,000 or 1,500 watt amp today. Now the part that I'm most upset about is they call it a power series, which I think is a joke. It's really 2 punch 30 HDs in one enclosure. It's head unit power. The Molex speaker plug sucks. There's no crossover, no bass, no treble, none of that. And they're relatively rare now, I guess because people didn't buy them because they're really useless. Also, the efficiency was the lowest I've measured with any amplifier I've ever tested. Now, just to clarify, I'm not giving this amp beef because it didn't do its rated power, because obviously it did. You got exactly what you paid for. But back then, the Power Series was known as the lunatic version of Rockford amps, the ones that, you know, everybody wanted, everybody dreamed about. This one, it didn't really fit that. It also said the Power Series typically gave 190% more than their rated power. This one barely got to its rated power. All that said, I feel it justified to call this the worst Rockford Fosgate amp ever. What do you think? Comment below. Well, there you have my review, dyno test, and speaker test of the Power 100 HD from Rockford Fosgate from around 1990 to 1992. Not a big fan of these, but hey, it is what it is. A big shout out to Brian, Tom, Ross, Dennis, and Daniel for helping me out with some of the literature that I needed and some information I needed to make this video. You guys rock. Also, thanks to everyone else for watching, commenting, liking, and subscribe to my channel. Follow me if you like this type of information. More coming in the near future. Till next time, Big D, I'm out of here. Videos like this are a passion project for me. I really love finding out history of these old school items. Here in 1990, I got this from Brian. It's a brochure from Rockford Fosgate, which is very odd because the Power 100 HD wasn't supposed to come out until 91, but according to this, the Punch 75 and the Power 100 were the only HD models that were listed in this brochure. So I had to ask online some former Rockford employees, what was the deal? Why not the 45 HD, 75 HD, 150 HD? Why aren't they all listed? Why is it just a couple of them? And here's Chris's answer. Not sure. If you know for sure, leave a comment below. Again, as a comparison here, we're going to try the 4 ohm bridge mode at 1 kilohertz for the dynamic burst test at 1 kilohertz. See how it does. Oh, wow. Definitely has more dynamic power at 1 kilohertz.
You know how them sound waves go?
Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave.